poverty is way bigger.
Through personal experiences,
I understood what money was really fast. I understood that it wasn't a lot of it.
These kids have become experts at doing without. Asking mommy for this and that, shoes and hats, was all I ever wanted, but I learned quickly that wasn't possible, wrote one student. Homeless at a young age, wrote another. Couldn't go back for seconds even when I was still hungry, the words of one more. The kids go to Miami Norland Senior High School, where the community is united by similar socioeconomic challenges.
Throughout my community, I've seen a bunch of others going through poverty.
The Miami-Dade County School District gave us access to these young minds. Their voices represent countless children across America, some who suffer in silence.
It's definitely an experience that you grow ashamed of.
They took their hardships and brought them to an academic competition in the school district called the Aspen Challenge. Their project, POP, acronym for Progress Over Poverty, won. And with that, they launched community solutions, including public education about finances and the distribution of essentials to needy families.
They are the hope. They are the hope. And
Precious Simonette was the faculty member in charge of the team.
It was really important that that we had a lot of students on the team who were brave enough, vulnerable enough to say, listen, like, I experience poverty on a regular basis. This is what it is and this is what it isn't. And being able to have those authentic and courageous conversations definitely helped the students to decide what they were going to do to combat the issue.
Their work remarkable in the eyes of most everyone, including their parents.
Yeah, I'm very proud of her.
Their understanding of financial struggle
Oh, it's hard. It's hard.
moved this mother to tears.
Sometimes you have to be alone.
I'm so proud of him.
That understanding instead bringing on reflection for this mom about the innocence she tried to protect when her boy was younger.
Don't let them know the finance part. You don't want them to worry. That's my job. Your job is to be my son, go to school, do what you were supposed to do, and enjoy life.
Talking with these teenagers proved just how resilient they are and how determined they are to impact other lives.
Having no support system at home.
As the school year ends, these kids plan to continue implementing their project in their community to help people who they know are just like them. The kids collected donations and held a distribution just a few weeks ago. Another distribution is planned for August. Reporting in Miami-Dade County, I'm Stephanie Bertini for Start Your Day.
I love that package. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Progress over poverty is really important. That just because you grow up in an environment doesn't mean that your environment has to become you the entire time, that there is hope. And it struck me when the mom was talking about her job was not to show her kids what she is going through so that they can concentrate on what they need to do in school. And it just reminded me of the way I grew up. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't grow up in poverty, but we were poor. But we're not poor-minded. We just didn't have a lot of money. So I shouldn't say poor because poor is a state of mind. And there have been nights that I would come home and the lights were off. But my mom would always make it seem like we're having a party. You know, she would light candles, whatever. There have been times when we didn't have food to eat, but she would make pancakes, and I thought it was a treat. I mean, what kid did not want to have pancakes for dinner? So she always made it, for me, something that she took a negative and made it into a positive so that I didn't worry, even though growing up, I realize now how worried she may have been. So I appreciate her, and I appreciate the moms, and I appreciate this program for doing what they're doing for these kids.
Absolutely. You know, and I think when we look at education and with parents having to figure it out, it's such a heavy burden on so many parents this past year. Now they're going into the next school year having to figure out, you know, are there vaccination requirements? And financially, what is this going to mean for the family if the child stays at home? And all of these different layers that they have to think about. And then just, I think of my nieces and I think of the really young kids who missed out on so many of the social opportunities to be able to be just next to another child, right? And play.
Right.
And do things like bother another child and have to defend yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like social skills that we probably took for granted growing up. And I think sometimes when things are rough inside of a home, that school becomes sometimes, for so many, an outlet. Because you're there 7-8 hours a day. And we didn't get that this past year for so many of the students. And so hopefully the thought leaders are thinking of really smart ways to try to, you can't make up for the time completely, but what are some ways that we can help to speed up some of the progress? Because we know, especially it hit so many of the low income, of the Black and brown communities so hard. There were reports of missing children. There were reports of, of domestic violence. So many different things that happened throughout the pandemic that honestly really just haven't been highlighted enough. And we don't know, I think, the severity from a social level and educational level at all right now. I think we're still trying to figure that out because we're making our way through the pandemic, but we're not in the clear at all.
But that's where the mental health progress comes into play, even at an early age. Don't wait until you're older and adult, because a lot of the trauma that you suffer while you're a child, when you're growing up in those kind of conditions or whatever. So they need to have somebody, an outlet, like you said, to be able to talk to somebody. And you're right, that's their escape, to get away from what's going on inside the home. Sometimes some kids, their only real meal of a day comes when they're in school, whether it's a breakfast program or at lunch, and it's like 7 hours, 8 hours. I wouldn't say it's daycare, but it's away from the home and away from the environment in which they come from. And I'm not saying all those kids come from a bad environment or whatever, but at the same time, it is something that needs to be thought about. And during the pandemic, I know we got to wrap up, but during the pandemic, first thing I thought about is, all the homeschooling. Like, okay, does every home have Wi-Fi?
Right.
What if you have 3 or 4 kids and now how many computers do they have at home to actually be able to go to class? These are the type of things that we have to think about when it comes to like this type of pandemic. Obviously, we didn't know it was going to happen, but those are the things that come to the forefront when you think about these children not being left behind because of something that they don't have when it comes to their education. So I'm glad we're putting this on the spotlight and putting this in the forefront because it needs to be talked about a little bit more.
How many kids were left to fend for themselves? While the parents had to work multiple jobs in a pandemic, right? And then worry about their health. So many layers to it.